It's getting picked up on my microphone a little bit, but honestly, close that vent. That should be it, because it's only picking up the wind or the breeze of it. If it doesn't close, the thing is, if I'm not speaking, someone else will be. So
yeah, that's true.
It'll be okay.
Yeah.
All right, so let's take a couple seconds and get going. We don't even have to clap. It feels weird. We didn't do a clap.
Should we clap just for our own comfort?
No.
Give Mike a hand.
Get out
a round of applause.
All right, yeah. Let's. I have to put. I'm going to just take notes in it.
You can just copy and paste it in a Google Doc later.
Yeah, I will. Now, Xander and I have a whole new system for tracking stuff, guys.
Wow.
It's awesome. It's something that I was kicking myself in the throat over. I was like, why didn't we do this from day one? Where you're tracking everything in Trello, because we're tech bros having a good time. I don't know what to do about these levels. It's so bizarre, because I talk, and if I get loud, it gets really loud, but then if I talk quiet, it's way too quiet. Is that how sound works? All right, let's get this show started. This is the I Read Comic Books podcast. I'm your host, Mike Rappin. With me this week, I have three very special people. We're all in the same room in a basement, just like the old days of recording I Read Comic Books. I am joined this week by Paul Jasley.
Hello, Mike.
Brian Murray.
Hey.
And Kait Lamphere.
Hi.
I do the pointing thing at home, by the way, when you're not there. I just want to be clear. I do that at home. I'm so excited that you guys are here. This is the annual number 5. This is the 5th anniversary of I Read Comic Books. We've been doing this since 2015. Now it's 2020. I don't know how decades work. That's why last week's episode covered 11 years. It was called The Longest Decade because it wasn't a decade. It was a decade plus one.
And it was the longest episode, so that makes sense.
We're trying all sorts of new things this year. Welcome to 2020. This episode today is going to be all about just talking about what we've been doing for the last year at I Read Comic Books. This is our official hangout episode where we just kind of shoot the shit, let you guys know how we're feeling about things, reflect on some of the good and bad times, mostly good times, that we've had over the last year. And so I guess to get things started, Kait, Brian, do you guys have a place you guys want to start with this? I know we kind of all decided, fuck it, we're going to drink beer and we're going to wing it today. But was there anything that stood out? You're like, I'm excited to talk about this on the show today.
Well, speaking of drinking beer and hanging out, I thought this year at C2E2, or last year at C2E2, was a blast. We were all together. It's not very common that all of us can be in the same room, all of the contributors.
Yes.
I mean, everybody. Xander was there.
Every single person
Every
was there.
person that's on the show was there. We got to spend some time together, have some fun in Chicago. We got to record some episodes. We got to meet new comic book friends, which is always the best part of conventions. Mm-hmm. I thought that was a great way to kind of kick off that year. That was in March. And then I think after that, it really set the tone for the show for the year, for me at least.
Yeah, totally.
I got out of my box a little bit and did the Grand Rapids Zine Festival, and I represented the podcast there. And then I've got another event coming up pretty soon. So that's exciting. I have to be extroverted to talk to people and get them to listen to our show, and it's unnatural for me, but a lot of fun.
Yeah, I mean, I'm super glad that you're doing that. Unfortunately, I'm in Michigan this week. Otherwise, I think I would have flown out just to do this because I couldn't be at the last one. I want to be the person at the table one time at least.
Oh, you'd be so much better than I am.
Mike, you are a lot better at shameless self-promotion, I think, than the rest of us are.
Sure, I appreciate you saying that, because usually I go home and go, what the fuck was I thinking? So just a, heads up to everyone out there. And yeah, I guess, this next year is going to be insane. I mean, we're going to Emerald City Comic Con. If you didn't know, we're going to Emerald City. We've got a handful of us going there. If you're not going to be at Emerald City, why not? I mean, come on, get on a plane. It's easy, right? It's just super easy. No, I understand.
Very affordable.
Yeah. But still, if you're in the area or you're planning to go to Emerald City, you should totally make sure that you let us know that you're going to be there. Yeah, because C2E2 was a blast, and next time I will try. I say this every year. I'm not going to try to plan everything and try to whatever, because it stresses me the fuck out. And this year, Emerald City, I'm just going to be like, I'm going to be at the con. And we're going to do things. And then we're going to drink beer with a handful of people that we know are already going. It's going to be great. But, Brian, I didn't let you take your moment. What's happened? What are you excited about, or what were you excited about last year?
For me, 2019 was defined by the I Read Star Wars Comic Books podcast.
Yes.
That was so much fun. Just like sitting down and recording those episodes with Kara. After we recorded the one about episode 9, the next weekend rolled around, and I realized, like, oh, what am I going to do?
I don't have this thing anymore in my life.
Yeah, like, I was like, should I just text Kara? It's like, say what's up?
I mean, it was quite a monumental thing you guys did, and it. Not to say that anything was rushed, but it did come together really fast. And even despite that, it was such a cool show. Like, I'm re-listening to the episodes because, like, when the episodes go up, I skim through them really quick. I listen to them at like 2.5 times speed to see if I hear anything weird. And if it's fine, then I just put the episode up.
Yeah.
With some minor things that I check at the beginning and end. But now I'm actually paying attention to the content on a deeper level and trying to link it up with stuff that I know. It's such a fucking cool show. Like,
yeah.
I just want to do more of that kind of stuff in the future. I hope everyone out there loved it because I dug it
a
lot.
But I think that Kara and I were a really good foil, as Kate has pointed out, that like Kara is super positive and wants to put like a good spin on everything and talk about it, whereas I'm kind of a fucking downer. So
I mean, don't be too hard on yourself, Brian.
Well, speaking of that, Mike, we read the Doom Patrol.
We did read Doom Patrol.
Mike and Paul read Doom Patrol. We never got a good name for the episodes. It's probably known as Mike and Paul read Doom Patrol, but that was a blast.
I read Doom Patrol comic books.
Yeah, oh, jeez.
That's going to be the whole thing.
I mean, from now on, sorry, we are just not creative over here. I mean, but yeah, I mean, that was a pretty stupendous run. I think of it as probably some of the hardest work I put into a show. Like, not to say I don't work on this show hard, but like I was really trying to study that, like all the volumes that we went through.
Yeah.
7 volumes, I don't remember. But still, I was really trying to get into it. And to the point where we had to break one of the episodes in half. Like, I remember sitting there and we were recording and I was like, Paul, we are only halfway through this volume and we've got an hour's worth of content. What the fuck are we going to do?
Right.
I mean, that was such a cool thing.
Yeah, I mean, it's been a while since I've actually like taken notes while I've read a comic, really detailed notes, really broken it down. And I think that's something hopefully we can do more of in the future. If people like those kind of episodes, I love doing that kind of stuff. So,
yeah, man, it was such a blast. I'm hoping that we've got some other stuff coming up. Like, we announced the Saga of Saga that is coming out like very soon, at the end of this month. I know Xander is working really hard to turn around like the first volume of that.
He's editing it right now, actually. I talked to him earlier.
Yeah, so he's editing it as we record right now on Friday. And it's coming out a week from now. I guess when this episode drops, it'll be out this Friday, I should say. January 31st, the first episode is coming out where you can get like a brief insight as to what it's going to be. And we are going through every single episode or issue of Saga, like issue by issue, with discussions about the ramifications of the plot, where seeds are listening, all that kind of stuff. And it is huge. We've got a bunch of episodes recorded. We've got more episodes to record, and we'll be dropping 2 or 3 episodes depending, every week. It's going to be monumentous. So I hope you guys get excited because there's a lot to get through. If you haven't read Saga, get on it before you start this series because it's going to be full spoilers. But yeah, I mean, doing more stuff like that is what I'm hoping we can do more in the future. Yeah. I mean, we've been trying to fill up our Patreon with as much content as possible, and I think people have enjoyed it. I know that the folks that have been supporting us for a long time are just like, give me more of this shit. I love it. So I really appreciate the feedback on that. But yeah, I guess we did a lot of really interesting stuff last year.
Yeah. I was going to say, on top of going to C2E2, that actually spawned a couple great episodes. We got to interview Dave Baker. I think meeting people at cons and getting them on the show.
Yeah.
And that was a great interview I think we did with Dave Baker initially. And it wasn't even so much that he was promoting his stuff. He just wanted to talk about comics. And I loved that idea of like, we can have a creator on that has a different vantage point of the industry and the creative process that we don't have. We just, as fans, don't know the ins and outs of the creative process. Mm-hmm. And if it's not so much, here's my book, please buy it. It's like, here's why I love what I do. That's such a great conversation to have.
Right. I mean, the thing that really worked a lot for me with that episode of that interview that we did was he Like, Dave is not necessarily someone that is like striving to work for the big two. He really just wants to put on his own shit. And to see that perspective, and not to say that is like me poo-pooing on anybody that wants to go write for Marvel or DC or anybody else, but like the thing that really struck me about that is he was just like, I want to make my own fucking comics. And it wasn't even about a self-ownership thing. It's just, these are stories that I can only tell on my own. Like, no big publisher is going to want to make this story. And I mean, I totally respect him about that. Plus, he's a font of knowledge when it comes to the industry. And that blew my, just listening, like sitting back and feeling like I don't have to do anything, just to ask Dave a simple question and he will unfold the entire universe in front of you. I really love that about him.
Yeah.
Was there anything else? I mean, beyond that stuff, Kate, you look like you've got something. I can actually look at you and know when you want to speak. It's great.
Yeah, I can't just butt in.
Yeah.
It's unnatural for me. I really dove into our quarterly zine this last year. I know that we're going to try something else in the year to come, but if anybody out there that's listening has anything that they want to include in our last quarterly zine, go ahead and send it in. Tell us why you love our podcast, what your favorite episode was, a review for your favorite book, anything like that. But I had a really good time.
And it definitely doesn't have to be about our show either. It can be anything. If you want to contribute something in some way, like Danny did some really awesome fan art, which I'm excited about. We got a whole couple of things coming down the line, hopefully. But like anything that you want, if you want to drop something in the zine that is more or less appropriate, we will let you know, and we will definitely be up for putting it in there.
That said, my ego is very fragile, so please be nice to me.
Yeah.
I want more pictures of cats. That's my goal.
Yes,
actually, if you send us pictures of your pets, that's pretty much guaranteed to get in.
Yeah. That's going to be like a whole section, I think, if you send in a photo of your pet.
We'll have to have an extra quarterly zine just for all the pictures.
Yes, hopefully.
But what I really loved about our zine this year was Paul's super long titles, like When to Stop Worrying and Love the X-Men, and then Nick's super long articles, which were funny and knowledgeable, and I loved reading them. But oh man, they were a lot of pages.
It's a big boy. It's a big boy, that article. I mean, the full edition is on the Patreon, and it's insanely long. I mean, like, it's detailed and it's good. And if you like the Alien franchise, I mean, I think it's a super great read, because I don't feel like it is actually long when you read it. But when you realize how many words it actually is made out of, it's insane. It's awesome. And for the record, I will say we are like broadcasting this episode live on Discord. I made a last minute decision to just like, let's just do this. If I can get the technology to work, we should just record this and hang out on Discord. I think after the show's over, we're probably going to open it up and hang out with everybody like we've done a handful of times before. But for recording, it's just going to be us. The deadline for submitting stuff for zines, Aaron, you asked a great question in the Discord. It's probably going to be sometime in the middle of February. Looking at my calendar right now, we don't have like a hard deadline for publishing it, but it's going to come out in February. So I would say if you get us something by maybe February 9th, February 16th, if we could probably get it out by the end of the month, just to give Kate enough time to make sure everything's organized, because she kills herself for this thing, you guys. It's so fantastic because Kate goes above and beyond to make it. I cannot express that enough. We've done a lot of things for the zine the last year. And Kate has always gone the extra mile to make sure that it's done. I haven't said it to you, Kate. Oh, my goodness. I can't believe how much work you put into this thing. It's awesome.
Well, Mike, you stay up with me and are still online when I finish it around 2 a.m.
I got to support you however I can.
Yeah, because you weren't going to still be up then.
No, Brian, I'm a good boy. I go to bed on time like a regular boy.
Yeah, you don't just go lay in bed on your phone.
No. Stop fucking watching me at night, Brian.
Yeah, I do want to say a thank you to both of you, Kate and Mike, for making that zine happen. What inevitably happens is that there's a deadline, and then I keep putting it off my duties, and then I end up pounding out 2,000-3,000 words the day it's due and turning it in a day or two late. So it's not that I'm not. The problem is I'm writing at the very last second,
right,
when inspiration strikes the hardest.
Of course,
of course, it ends up being perfect, and when it gets the finished product because of all your hard work to make me look like I put a lot more work into it than I did.
And yet you're still the first submission I usually get.
Yeah. Somehow that's how it always turns out.
Okay, I don't feel too bad. I take it all back.
Paul is reliably only a little bit late all the time.
Yeah, I'll take it. That's a good.
Listen, fucking at me, all right?
You guys live together.
I'm putting the final touches on the zine with like 3 pages to spare for whatever Brian does, and
Yeah.
I'm like, Brian, I need it right now.
Yeah.
She looks over. I'm sitting on my computer chair like fucking L from Death Note, like shoving candy into my face and playing video games.
Yeah, I mean, it's a wonder how much stuff we actually did last year in 2019. If only to the point where I think by the end of the year, like my whole body was like, "You got to stop. You got to slow the fuck down." And which is why not to say we're scaling anything back for next year, because I don't think that we're putting out anything any less. But like this zine is going to be our last quarterly zine, and I think we're going to move more to an annual zine that's going to be extra sized and all this other stuff. But I think in exchange, we're probably going to be doing a little bit more focusing on creating extra stuff, maybe creating a second feed of things that has like some of the released Patreon stuff that's been on the Patreon feed backlog for a while, or maybe we'll insert it in the main feed. Just trying to like change things up, maybe do more experimental stuff on the show. We joked before we started recording about doing like an ASMR episode, but I mean, I'm all for experimenting with the podcast, and so like I want to do more wild and crazy things, like weird bad listicles, like essentially Brian, Renee, and I did last week, where we talked about all these movies, and yes,
Made a lot of people mad.
Made a lot of people mad, but maybe that's the goal for 2020. Sorry, Brian, go ahead.
Yeah. Oh, I was just gonna say another candidate was. Sorry, as Danny says, he wasn't mad; he was hurt.
Yeah.
Another candidate for an off-the-wall episode was the Drive Time Radio Show. With what was it, Paul? Was it Manic Mike and the Douche?
I think that'd be a good characters for that.
Yeah, we'll do like a full-blown radio show where
The Morning Zoo Crew.
Yeah, Morning Zoo Crew, sound effects and everything. I mean, no joke. Since I started this podcast, I have dreamt of doing something like that. If only just to have like a soundboard next to my computer that I can hit the like noise as things are happening, and I'd have to put on a whole voice, and then we have a whole cast of characters. I mean, but again, this is like more production crazy shit. But I'm also like for doing that, and I realize that
fine,
maybe
Xander can handle it.
Yeah.
No, I mean, and also the big thing is we don't want to burden Xander, so it's like, how can we do stuff like, would just a plain live recorded episode with minor editing be fine to put up on a secondary feed where we're like, here's some extra shit that Irie Comic Books is doing, because that's probably not in the vein of what we're doing, right? Like, I don't think that works for our IRCB feed, but it's something that could be fun for us to do, and it would still be like comic book oriented in some capacity, but a little bit off the wall compared to our regular show.
IRCB After Dark.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah. This is the Adult Swim version of Irie Comic Books, where it's adult stuff, and we're gonna have weird, off-the-wall, fucking 10-minute long TV openings. You know,
Super chill music though.
Yeah. We'll hire some beat maker off the internet, off SoundCloud, and get him or her to make all the music for us.
What I really want is everybody's morning commutes where we just stream of consciousness all of our thoughts. So Brian's is super angry. I'm noticing all the fonts on billboards, and we got all the noise of the subway from New York.
Yeah, you would hear me talking in the background, but it would be muffled as the sound of subways is happening in the background. And Paul, I don't know. Do you walk to work? Or
No, I do have a car,
Okay.
but my commute is about at 8 minutes, so it's a very truncated conversation I have with myself about Judge Dredd usually.
So before you get too deep in it, you're like, oh, and I'm here.
It's just like 4 minutes of like silence and road noise, and then just a very quiet, I am the law.
I see somebody run a stop sign, and that's what I think.
Yeah.
I do want to say, the reason we're able to do all this stuff and have all these amazing ideas is that I feel this past year has been a really increase, at least on my part, of fan interaction. I hate the word fan, I guess friend interaction.
Yeah, really.
Friends of the show. I mean, it's been really heartwarming to have people comment on the show and say how much they like it. And again, it's not so much a fan creator dynamic as it just they're friends of the show that are excited to talk about comics with us,
Yeah.
And I really love that. And if that gives us an opportunity to do more off the wall or experimental or just generate more content, that's thank you so much. Like we love to talk about comics, and any excuse to do it we'll take. So
Yeah, I mean, I know I was kind of hesitant to start up the Discord, because in my mind it was something that I was like, oh fuck, this is just one more thing I got to manage. And not to say that I hate any of the things that we do, but like sometimes I lose track of some stuff. Like our Twitter will go dead for a day or two, or our Instagram will go dead for a while, like it has right now, because I've just been overwhelmed. I haven't had time to plan stuff, or for instance, like our Goodreads, like there was, I think, a month last year where the first of the month stuff didn't go up for 4 days just because I was on a time crunch for work. I was traveling, and like I just missed posting the what are you reading this month and all that stuff. And it's a bummer, and because it's kind of it's just a lot to juggle sometimes.
Yeah.
But the Discord has become one of the most amazing things as like our group has put together, because everybody that is on this group, and it's not a lot, but it's like 30 or so people that we know kind of jump in and out, including the IRCB folks, and it is a pleasure to constantly be interacting with fans that understand who our show is. I mean, we've got a backlog of 231 episodes plus minisodes, bonus. It's like almost 300 total things we've put out on the feed. And they understand like where we are in our corner of comics. They understand how we approach things, like how we feel about things like garbage Comicsgate stuff. Like they know that we're not going to stand for any of that shit. And like we have a specific corner that we get to sit in, and these people come to the show's Discord and they understand like who we are, and so talking to them feels like natural. Like they are another part of the group of people that makes me feel comfortable to talk about comic books with. I guess I'm not speaking well because this beer is hitting me very quickly. But what I'm trying to say is like my biggest joke for this show has always been I don't like talking about comic books with people, because it's true. If I go to a convention and someone goes, "Oh, well, what did you think about X?" And I'm like, "I didn't read that X-Men book," and they're like, "Oh, well, Mike, this is a hypothetical situation. I was just using X as a placeholder," and I go, "Oh," and now we're back to square one. But what I'm really trying to say is the joke is, I don't really like talking about comic books with people, and yet here we are with this group of 8 regulars that show up, and this group of people on our Discord that I feel super comfortable throwing my opinions out and not feeling like they're going to just stab me in the throat because for some reason I didn't like Excalibur #1 for some reason, and it's a really nice feeling to have. I hope everyone else feels the same way about that when you guys get on the Discord, but I really like just being able to talk to these folks, and the Hangouts I think have really helped that. I'm going to stop talking now because I've been blathering.
Well, no,
Paul, you brought this up.
You made a good point, and I think it's sometimes difficult to be on social media because it's a very small segment of the comic book fandom, but the most vocal seems to be, Comicsgate, a very toxic type of fandom. And that gets, I think, there's a megaphone up to that stuff, unfortunately, but the vast majority of people I've met and talked to in comic books on the Discord, I've met through the show, I've met at conventions, are the most lovely people that just love comics, and that's, I think that's really the core thing. It's like we all have different tastes, which I love. I love the fact that everyone on the show has got their own little pet things that they love. They've introduced other people too. We're not just talking about the same stuff or big two stuff. And that spreads throughout all the friends we've met through the Discord, through Patreon, at conventions. It's a celebration of the art form and the medium rather than just, that toxic fandom that I think is small but far too vocal.
Yeah.
Yeah, we don't spend a lot of our time being, hashtag mad online.
Yeah, we try not to be. I mean, outside of last week's episode, I feel like we tried it. Maybe it didn't suit the show very well.
You were covering a lot very quickly.
True.
Yeah, it's a lot easier to go fast when you just look at a movie, make a fart noise, and move on.
Totally. The thing that I don't know, I want to say like our good, and this is not to like say that everything is focused on our Discord. I think our Discord has helped like basically lessen the distance between us and the folks that listen to the show. I do want to shout out our Goodreads folks that aren't on Discord but listen to the show very fervently and are big fans. And I only know this because I'm getting feedback from them from the survey that we have right now. It ends tomorrow as we're recording this. And to hear people say, "Oh, I found this show on Goodreads. I searched comic books and I found it," or I, searched comic books on my podcatcher. Turns out you guys have a Goodreads. That's awesome. I'm huge on Goodreads, and now I'm part of this thing. Our Goodreads folks, I mean, we've got a lot of maybe like 40 or so people that are super regular and really make that place super welcoming. I think the discussions they have that's on there, it can be a little, I don't want to say problematic, but it can be a little aggressive, but that's okay. Like it's a healthy kind of back and forth that people have about some things. A lot of the times everyone's agreeing. They're saying, "I really love this thing. I'm really glad that I tried this thing. Oh, the reading challenge introduced me to this thing." And it's really great to see so many people experimenting with comic books simply because they trust what we have to say. And I don't think that we necessarily set this show out to be something that it's like, I am a voice in comics and you must listen. But it's interesting to see that we have become that in some capacity. Mm-hmm. One of the constant compliments that I hear about this podcast is not just from people in real life or on Twitter or whatever, but on the survey in specific, has been, you guys read so many diverse books. You've introduced me to so many things. I would have never known about this book that I now love because if I hadn't listened to this show, and that like makes my heart swell. And I'm so happy that we've done something positive in comics. And that's what I found in the last year. I feel like the impact that we have has only grown from previous years. I feel like I wasn't hearing that as much in the past couple of years. This year it's been super prevalent. And I think part of that is because we've read so many fucking comic books as a group. Now we're like stretching to be like, what else is out there? You know?
That's true. Yeah.
You mean when I pick up random things from all of these conventions that I go to, that's a good thing? Because
it is. Yeah. I mean, like our book versus book, I never would have picked up the Castle in the Sky. I never would have picked that up. But you introduced me to it, and then there's like 4 more, and I was like, oh hell yeah, I want to read the rest of this.
And it's so different from American comics.
Yes, I mean it's a Franco-Belgian comic. It's not what you expect out of a Western book in all the right ways. I don't know. I'm glad to hear that even after 5 years, we're not getting tired of comics and we're trying to find new ways to explore the medium. Because obviously there's millions of comics out there. A lot of them are superhero comics, but they don't all have to be, you know?
Well, I think that's interesting that, you know, you mentioned at the top of this particular episode that we're back in the basement like we started. And Mike, I was right there with you.
I know. Yes. You and Nick was always called in, but still, yeah.
And, you know, I think right from day one, we tried a few approaches with the format of the podcast, what we're going to talk about. But there was, I think, once we got over those sort of initial like second guesses of what we wanted it to be, right from the start, it was we want to talk about the experience of reading comics and experiences of being a comic book fan. Right. And I think growing the number of contributors and then reaching out to friends of the show on social media and the channels we have now, that's only expanded the amount of stuff we have to talk about. There's some times where I think like, boy, we've already talked about everything there is to talk about comics. And then all of a sudden, you know,
and then we find an episode. An
idea will come up. And I think speaking, you know, of the past year in specifically, I've been reading comics in some capacity or another for about 30 years.
Right.
And I think it's only in the past year or so that I've actually felt really positive about the future of comics. I don't think in 2 or 3 years ago I would have said I'm excited about comics as a medium and it having a great, bright future.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And I think the past year, the diversity in material and creators, I think the positivity I see among fans, it's the most exciting time to be a comic book fan. And I've been reading comics for a long time. And I think part of that is there's so much stuff out there, and that was my challenge for myself last year, to read a lot of different stuff. It was mostly Judge Dredd, but maybe this year I'll actually read some more diverse stuff. But again, that positivity and that's what the show stands for, and I'm glad that that's coming through to everyone that listens.
Yeah,
so, yeah.
I mean, I understand that sentiment quite a bit. I don't, Kate, Brian, I realize I've just been talking nonstop. So do you guys have any bits you want to jump in with before I go on another rant?
I like seeing all of these smaller comic book publishers that come up and how many people, especially with Kickstarter being a thing, people can fund their one-off books, their ideas, their independent books, and I really like seeing the variety and the experimental ideas that brings to the industry, and I like picking them up randomly from Comic-Cons.
Oh yeah. The thing that's really gotten to me is that I think, Paul, you hit it on the head with I used to feel pretty negative about comic books, and I feel like it's interesting that I feel like I go week to week and I have this strangely pessimistic view about. Sometimes I'm just like, man, I don't know if we're going to have a topic this week. Like this topic, I just don't know. Like, I don't know if it's going to work. And so we managed to pull an episode out of it. And it's a great episode. I feel like every time I have the most doubt about the episode of a show, and like, this is on me. I should be more confident in the people that I work with. And that's a reflection of me, right? But don't make that face, Brian. It's a reflection of me in that I worry sometimes that like there isn't something to be said about a specific subject that I kind of maybe threw out there, or maybe someone else put in our topic stock, and like there isn't a lot to be said. And sometimes the episodes run a little short, and that's okay. But I feel like I never come out of any episode feeling worse about what we did. Like, I feel like we made something that is actually worthwhile every single time. Somehow we've managed to do that for 5 years. I don't fucking understand it. I don't know. Somebody gave me a little bit of luck at one point, and it's managed to work. I don't know.
Well, I think that the reason we're able to do that is because of the time we put into it. I don't think anybody half-asses anything on the show.
Yeah.
It might be last minute, but it's not half-assed. You know, so there's a difference.
We're always whole-assing it. That's what we could say, okay?
We whole-ass it for a solid 30 minutes before the show.
Yes.
We're all in the Google Notes doc, and everybody is in there typing stuff up.
Frantically typing things away, yeah. With that, I do want to take a quick break. I want to get something that isn't a beer, and we're going to come back, and we're going to keep going with this. I just feel like the show needs a break sometimes. We do it every week. Why not this week? So
Sounds
we'll be
good.
back in just a second.
Enjoy the sounds of my basement.
Yeah.
Okay, we're back from our semi-artificial break. If you've been hanging out with us on the Discord, you know that we were mostly just chit-chatting for a bit. And so before we get into things, any further from us, I did reach out. I did scream on the internet for a minute today to try to get some folks to send us some stuff. And we did get a handful of people sending us some information, things that they loved about the last year of I Read Comic Books. I want to go through those really, really quick. One of them was from... I guess this guy is officially my enemy on the internet. I've never had an enemy on the internet. He calls us frenemies. I feel like there's more of an enemy aspect here, but Raggedy Joe, as always, constantly giving me grief on the internet. He said his favorite moments from the last year are all the episodes that I'm not on it.
Oh.
God damn it. But he did DM our Twitter account, and he said his favorite moment was calling me out on not reading Wasted Space and then having me turn around to read it. And I will say, I took that as a challenge. I genuinely did. I was like, you know what, motherfucker? Fine. I'll read your garbage book, and then it turns out I really like said garbage book, but you know what? I read X-Men, so that's not really a surprise now, is it?
Maybe it's because you're such an X-Men fan, he thinks that you need an arch enemy, so he's just there to be that person.
You know what? If he's trying to,
he's your Mr. Sinister.
Yeah, he wants to be my Mr. Sinister. If he's trying to be my arch rival a la L versus Light, from Death Note, because we're going to continue with that reference tonight.
Didn't expect that one to pick up the way it did.
I mean, sure, if he's trying to make me better or kill me, we'll find out as the story progresses.
One thing in 2020 is the rest of you have to find age-appropriate pop culture references for me, the old man on the show. I never know what any of you are talking about.
Okay. Let me see. So you weren't big on Pokemon, were you?
No.
Okay, well, then I don't know.
It's like Pokemon, Harry Potter, pretty much anything comes up on our group chats. I'm like, well, I'm out. So.
I mean, did Bruce Springsteen have an arch rival that made him better as a musician? Was it David Bowie for some reason?
Maybe,
I don't know.
Or maybe Prince. I don't know.
I want to see that epic rap battle.
Give me the exact opposite of what Bruce Springsteen is as a rival. Like, that would be great.
Didn't we just have an episode about something being aggressively heterosexual?
Yes, we did.
Again, did not expect that joke to kill the way it did.
Sorry. Okay. Moving on. Danny, probably, I don't know, one of the best guys that I know on the internet, quite possibly. I'll just say that. He said over quite a few things that he really loved over the last year. He called out episode 191, titled, I Don't Know What Hulkverines Are and I'm Afraid to Look. I mean, that was a title that I really, really loved. I do want to talk about, episode titles because it's a thing. Danny said he's a sucker for Impulse Buys, so we really liked that one. He liked episode 215, Going Rogue. There was a lot of feelings there. And the mini-sode about mansplaining in comics was something that he really dug into. And I always appreciate these episodes that offer, kind of a harsh reality of, this is a bad or a tough thing in comics, and we need to address it. We can't fix it today, but it's something that you should be aware of. I really appreciate those types of discussions that we have on the show. I Read Comic Book Star Wars podcast definitely, or I Read Star Wars comic books, had a lot of that, which I really appreciated, of just this is bad. It's okay, but it's bad. And so one of the things that Danny wanted to bring up about the mansplaining in comics is that as much as I would like, I'm not part of a diverse comic community locally other than the book club he's in. So it was important to hear and be reminded of how to treat people in our comic space, which, again, it's one of those things where I'm like, I forget that this show can have a positive impact on people. And I really appreciate all the stuff that we get in our show. It's amazing to hear that folks that are listening to it are getting the same stuff out of it that I am. And I'm on the show every week. So I really appreciate you guys sending that stuff out to us. It really means a lot, even if it means that you're my enemy on the internet. At least that's something. So in kind of that same vein, I want to look to you guys. What were some of your favorite episodes or moments or even titles? Because like I said, I got a whole thing about titles that I just love making them. But Kate, I think let's start with you.
Well, my favorite episode was Mike Rappin, the swellest guy, which Mike Rappin was not on, but it was me, Paul, and Nick just talking about how wonderful Mike is, partially as a present for his wedding. Congratulations again,
yes,
Mike.
Thank you.
Good pick. I like her. Good job.
That was your pick of your life, not the pick of the week.
Right.
Yeah.
Pick of your life.
I mean, I was gonna say there's a lewd joke in there somewhere that I'm just not gonna make. So.
But yeah, it was just the three of us complimenting Mike and saying how much he's done for the show and, how it wouldn't exist without him and how he keeps on our case to get stuff done. And it makes me feel motivated to do more, which I hope I show through some of the extra things that I do.
Yes. What's funny?
We already complimented you, Kate. Come on.
The thing that's the funniest to me about that is, or the thing that shocked me the most about that was, one, it was a direct violation of our show's ethics code. I'm kidding. Really, I was in Japan when that episode was aired. Like, Xander and Kara did all the work. They handled all the producing duties while I was in Japan and all that stuff. And I was still trying. I still listen to our show. When I'm not on it, I listen to every single episode. Even though I said I'm catching up on I Read Star Wars comic, but that's a whole other thing. It's a whole thing. But I listened to all of our episodes, and when that came out, it was genuinely like the nicest thing I'd ever heard. It was it's really hard to hear people say really nice things about you, and to hear a whole episode about it was I almost I was super overwhelmed. It was very, very kind of you guys to go out of your way and break protocol and go rogue. But I mean, no, it was very nice. I really appreciate you guys saying all of that. I almost convinced Kelly to listen to an episode of our show because of that. I'll just say that because she does not listen to the show.
Sure.
But no, that was really nice. I really appreciated that.
I mean, I definitely can't blame Kelly. I don't listen to the show unless I'm on it.
Yeah,
so.
yeah.
Speaking of episodes that I was on, that's actually it's an example of what I really liked about this past year and the podcast in general is the episodes when we all just kind of go nuts. I like it when shit gets a little weird on the I Read Comic Books podcast. And in episode 211, when Nick and I talked about alternate universes and weird crossovers, like Archie versus Predator. I felt like there was just there was so much chaotic energy infused into that episode, and those are the ones I really like to record, is when it feels like we are just shooting the shit about how wild comics get.
Yeah. I mean, I remember walking in, and that was one of those episodes where I was kind of like, man, I don't really know how much there is here to talk about, and it turns out there's quite a fucking bit to talk about. And to this day, whenever people are like, oh, what's a weird comic book? I'm like, I got a whole episode about this, guys. Don't you worry. And some of that stuff is still drilled in my mind. I think when we talked about Archie versus Predator pretty recently.
Yeah, last week's episode, I brought it up again.
I know, we keep bringing up last week's episode because it's very fresh in my mind. But bringing that up, I mean, I walked away from that episode telling someone at work about it, and they were like, hold on, wait, what is this? And I went into a whole thing about it, and I may have made them a comic book fan, like someone that definitely doesn't read comic books. And that kind of weird stuff it's really, really fun. I don't know if you had another episode or anything, Brian, that came to mind, or
no,
otherwise.
just that general theme of
right.
When Mike is on the razor's edge of losing complete control of the show.
Right. Basically,
that's when I'm having the most fun.
Yeah, when I put some of the most chaotic human beings that I know in one room, such as Brian and Nick, or Brian and Renee, or Renee and Nick. It's just the three of you.
Yeah. We're the bad boys of the I Read Comic Books podcast.
Well, the thing that works, and I mean, I don't mean to diminish any of your characters by any means, but like, it is constantly on the verge of chaos sometimes with the three of you. With that combination, see also last week's episode.
Yeah.
Renee and Brian together, Brian, Renee, and I have known each other for a very, very long time. So there is this kind of weird
we
dynamic.
Regressed almost immediately.
It basically fell back into how we were in college, which is totally fine. But it's still a lot of fun because there is chaos there, and that can be very entertaining to listen to, and it's super fun to be a part of. Like, I came out of last week's episode going, oh my God, that was so fucking long. But that was probably some of the most fun I've had in a long time, like on the show. And not to say the show isn't fun, but like, what a wild episode that we put together. And I want to do a lot more of that in 2020. But I'm not going to ramble anymore. I know I keep saying it. But Paul, what were some of your favorite moments in 2020, episode-wise?
I do want to say I enjoyed having to fill in a few times for you. Not that I did enjoy you not having you on the show.
Sure.
But and I do take that responsibility very seriously. You have no idea how much I stress about it, but it's always fun to kind of to have that dynamic there. And an episode in particular that I really enjoyed where I was hosting was episode 205, when it was Kara, Tia, and I talking about art theory. We were talking about the death of the author, and I actually got to stretch my philosophical and artistic theory muscles a little bit more than I do usually. And
totally.
I think we got a really good positive response to that episode. It's nice to hear people wanting to hear that type of discussion about comics specifically.
Oh, yeah.
Also, episode 210, where I don't have the episode titles in front of me, but
do you have the Hoxpox? Is what it's called.
That's right. It's you, me, and Tia. I believe we were talking about unconventional art styles.
Yeah,
I really enjoyed that for the same reason. It was like we could actually get some pretty serious, in-depth discussions about, art theory in comic books, which I anytime you can talk about some serious and academic aspects to reading comics, I'm always there for those conversations, and I'm glad people liked it.
Yeah.
We can do more of that stuff, and I think that's a positive thing.
Yeah, I mean, I think we get some of the most interesting feedback, positive feedback, interesting and positive feedback from those episodes on Twitter, direct messages, emails, and stuff.
Yeah.
From those kinds of episodes. And yeah, I always am just the kid in the room, just being like, "Wow, the adults sure are smart.
They know some big words."
But I think that what makes those episodes interesting now is I feel like 5 years later, right? I feel like I can contribute to the conversation more so. I mean, I don't have a degree in art history or philosophy or anything like that, but after speaking with you guys and being, having these discussions about how do you dig deeper into comics, like we did that episode all about how do you find deeper themes and meanings in comics.
Right.
And we talked about the art and how you can interpret art when you rip all the dialogue away. How do you actually understand what's happening? Doing things like that and talking to folks, like Tia and Nick and you guys just where we're focusing on like approaching comics from an academic perspective has changed the way that I look at comic books, and I feel like has made me a better comic book reader to a certain regard, and I always appreciate that. And then we got the other side of our show, which is the chaos realm. I'm kidding.
The shitty screaming goblins over here.
No. And I say that because it's interesting that our show, and every single time we put out a survey, we get this. It's a direct 50-50 split of people who are like, give me more academic topics, give me more like in-depth research topics, and the other people are just like, give me these guys yelling about Superman with a mustache, like
slamming their forks on the table.
Right, and we appeal to both.
Why not both?
Right? And I which to me goes, I don't know how to make the show more better off of that. That's fine, and to me that makes it sound like we've done the right thing. We've created a show that can be respected, but then there's also some fun. And 5 years later, like I feel very confident that I can still keep doing that. At least trying to do that.
And I think it works really well too, because that might mean that somebody might tune in for an episode and realize, like, I'm not really interested in this subject. I don't really want to listen to this one. But then they know that if they come back next week, it's going to be something different.
Yeah.
Like no one is going to listen to one episode of I read comic books that they don't like and think, well, I don't like I read comic books.
Yeah, I mean, if you happen to tune in on an episode for the first time, but I think you're right. I think that everybody who I've talked to about this show has said, I gave it a couple of episodes and I realized that there's a lot of dynamic. Like, there's a range to this show. And I think that's what we set off to do in the first place.
Right.
Like Paul, you said earlier, it's about the experience of being a comic book, fan, and that has been like at the core of it. It's like, as a comic book fan, what are the range of things you could explore, right? Could you dig into the academic side of it? Could you dig into what if Superman had a mustache? It's a range, and not to say that those are the two poles, but it is
pretty close.
But even still, like, there's a lot of different stuff. And I know that, like, on our show, we don't really dive too much into the TV side of things and the movie side of things. With rare exception, we did a whole Daredevil season 2 or 3 episode a while ago. Yeah. And, I mean, that was a real long time ago. We did the movie episode recently. We've covered different things, but that's what I want to try to explore in the next year is how can we maybe do movie things? Maybe, we did this episode last week, which kind of spawned a bunch of ideas of, like, what if we just got on Discord and just like had some beers and said, "Hey guys, if you got the DVD, press play right now. We're gonna talk about it live." Stuff like that.
Yeah.
I want to try to do more stuff like that, and this kind of gets me into where we are. I want to do in the future. But if I could talk about really quickly the things that I really loved about this last year. Excuse me. Sorry, I'm just full of...
getting really choked up.
I'm getting really choked up on this here sparkling water that I'm guzzling.
Mike has been chugging down soda water.
Yeah. I mean, I said it before. I said it again. I really love the I Read Star Wars comic books series. Like, Brian and Kara, you guys basically putting together this monstrosity of a thing so quickly and so elegantly was very impressive. It's just like, find another one. Do it. That was awesome. I love the subject matter, and I realized that this is just like the further blossoming of my I am a very big Star Wars fan and did not realize it kind of mentality. The other thing, I mean, the Mike Rapp and the Swellest guy, again, that I genuinely teared up in Japan brushing my teeth as you guys were being way too nice about my dumb ass. There are some episode titles that I really, really love. I want to shout out to Nick, who pushed me to read Ice Cream Man, and we did our whole 3-episode, going to be soon to be 4-episode miniseries about Ice Cream Man that we've been doing in minisodes. That book has broken my brain in a lot of different ways, and I love it for that reason. It's a great anthology series. I think, Brian, you started reading it, and like Nick and I, for some reason, got hooked onto it. I don't know.
Yeah, I read the first issue, and I was like, this is good and weird, and then I just didn't pick it up again. Because I do that a lot, where I'll go to the comic shop and be like, oh, I want this, I want this, I want this. And then realize I bought $35 worth of comic books.
Yeah.
And then realize, like, I can't add all of these to my pull.
Yeah.
As Danny says, release the Ice Cream Man cut. That's the Ice Cream Man minisodes with me instead of Nick. Before I got recast.
Let's see. So... episodes that we had from last year, the titles that I really liked, Kait Senpai, that sounds right, as Kate was getting her, like, working on her doctorate.
Yep.
Let's see, Brian mentioned this.
Sorry, Daddy, again, just it's Nick with a mustache.
Let's see, 2 Phasmas are better than 1. I really liked, Do You Eat a Space Orange for Space Scurvy? That was pulled right out of the show. We did comic books that were shot with a literal bullet. Let's see. I don't know. I'm just going through this. Things like devastating one-liners to poor boys. I've heard of it. It must be popular, featuring Paulie.
That's right. I do. Yeah, that was a good one.
I mean, Paul, you made the joke that still to this day, like, about we were talking about Paper Girls, and I think it was that episode. And just like the guy from Paper Girls not knowing what Lizzo is, like, for some reason, just tickled me in a lot of different ways. Let's see. Mike no longer drinks energy drinks.
Is that true, Mike? Is that true?
It is true. It is true. I haven't had an energy drink since last July.
Wow.
I've been really trying not to drink them. I do love my own Werner Herzog impression. This is the I've been reading comic books podcast. It's to me, it still tickles me. And yeah, I don't know. Aggressively Heterosexual was a fun episode. That was very recent. I don't know.
Nothing will ever beat Skin Cape for me, though.
No, it's such an old episode, too. I was going through, so...
It was like 61 or something like that.
Yeah, this is like Tia came on the show, and it was just like, perfect title.
I think that might have been my first like interaction with Tia. Might have been
Was it on
recording
that
that
episode?
episode.
That wouldn't surprise me.
My very first episode ever was with Tia, and she's one of my favorite people to listen to because she has such an in-depth, like, academic view of the art side of comics. She's so knowledgeable, so I was so intimidated to record with Tia, and then, like, you, like, went away from the mic, when we were setting up, and I was like, oh no, Mike, I'm going to say something, and it's going to be completely unforgivable to this person that I really, like, admire.
I mean, Tia is a teddy bear when you get to know... No. I'm kidding. No, do you know what? Tia is one of the most fantastic people to talk to about comic books because she's not going to bullshit you about anything. She's not going to be nice to you because you like a bad thing. And I say, like, objectively bad things. Like, everyone gets their own interpretation, but like misogynistic, racist bullshit doesn't deserve your. But I kind of like it,
right?
Like whatever. She's just not gonna allow you to do that. So
it is.
It can be intimidating, is what I'm saying. But you know what? Once you get to know Tia, I promise you, it is not bad.
Yeah, the thing is that most of us are from the Midwest, so we have a lot of that like Midwestern energy of just like.
Oh yeah.
We desperately want you to like us, so even if we disagree, we're just going to be like, well, I don't know about all that. Tia didn't have that problem.
Yeah.
The dynamics that happen between the combinations, I think, is really interesting. I think maybe that's kind of the secret why we've been around for 5 years, right?
Yeah.
Is the fact we've grown that. And, Kara and I have very similar tastes. I think that works very well. Mm-hmm. T and I have the exact opposite taste. Can I have more different tastes in comics, but we have the great conversations about that. And I think that difference, it works in both directions in that way. So,
yeah, I mean, my biggest challenge this last year, I'm going to open a can on Mike, so sorry, guys. I'm putting it...
Rip it and rip it.
Opening up a cold bubbly for the boys and girls. The thing that's been a constant thing for me on the show has been like trying to make sure that we're equally matching folks up and making sure that people on the show a semi-equal amount of time. I've been trying to make graphs and data for that to make sure that I'm keeping myself in check and trying to adhere to people's schedules and stuff. Like some people have told me I can only be on the show once a month. And
if you've seen It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia, the Pepe Sylvia thing, Mike has a whole wall like that.
Yeah, and it's a challenge because the thing about it is like it's a balance of trying to make sure the right people are on for the right topic and in the right order, and we don't want to have two similar topics 2 weeks in a row. So like if it's Paul and Tia and then it's Brian and Kate, I don't want them talking about the same thing. But at the same time, I need Kate. Kate can only be on this week, and then Kate Scotchless can only be on this week, and then Renee's supposed to be on in this month, but he can only be on in the third Sunday. It's like it's a whole juggle, but I feel like it's mostly worked with rare exception where we had like last minute dropouts, and I feel like the last year of our show has been pretty good about that. I mean, we've outside of one episode that I think we had to scrap because of bad audio, like this last year has been perfect. And like the audio issue was like my computer just didn't record the second half of this episode, and I don't know why. I'm looking at you because I think it was you, Brian. Maybe that was 2 years ago. But even
it was. I don't remember what the episode was, but I remember that happening.
And we were just like, well, I guess we record a minisode or we broadcast a minisode. But so I mean, that's a little peek behind the curtain. Sometimes if a minisode just comes out of nowhere, it's either because there was a holiday that none of us remembered. Like, that happens to me all the time where I'm just like, oh, that's a holiday, I forgot. Or we just lose audio for random reasons. Like, that is no one's fault in particular. It's just like computer didn't do something, So yeah, the mix and match is a thing that I constantly try to do and try to make sure that it's weighed, so that we're getting people regularly enough to make sure that listeners who come in for certain people, because there are people out there just like, hey, I only listen to the show for these two people. And that's fine. That's your prerogative. You're missing out on some really good shit. I'll tell you that with the other folks. But if you only show up for 2 people, like, I want to make sure that they're on regularly enough that you feel like you have a good reason to come back. And if there is like academic topics, we usually have certain folks on. Like you and Tia are usually my go-tos when I need to put an academic topic on the show, or interviews. I have a range of people. Or if we're going to talk about manga, if I don't put Renee on, I feel like that's when I get like punched in the face next time I see him. So
Sure.
We skew things, and I do want to make sure there's a balance. That's pretty much what I'm coming down to.
There's so much work that happens behind the scenes. It's always alarming to me when I actually step back and think about it. What's funny is that we record every Sunday, but we have our group chat that all of us, the contributors, are on, which is pretty active. It's comes and goes, but like it's less about. It doesn't feel like a chore. It feels like we are a group of friends that occasionally come together to record. Does that make sense? It's not so much like something I have to do regularly because I'm only on a couple times a month. Yeah. But at the same time, it's something I think about a lot. I'm always thinking of new topic ideas or things to share with you guys. Like that's it. It's nice that it's become that. It's become less of a hobby I do every Sunday and more something that is a part of my comic book reading experience as being a part of this group. Yeah. Does that make sense?
Yeah. That's good to hear because I'm on the show every week with rare exception. So it is just a part of my life. And I said this a million times before on the show, but like when we've done these annual episodes, but we started the show, I was like, hey, every Sunday I'm going to be doing this thing. And my former girlfriend, now wife, I was like, hey, every Sunday I do this thing, FYI. And she was like, are you fucking kidding me? And I said, that's what's happening. And she rolled her up. No, I'm kidding. She was like, okay, if this is what you want to do, then I'll support you, and I will try to be quiet in the apartment. and bless Kelly for 5 years of this show. She has tried to keep quiet while we've been recording this show because now we live in this tiny apartment in New York, and so any noise gets picked up. So if you've ever heard weird things or you've heard cats in the background, I mean that's just because my desk is literally in the living room of my apartment, and it's been a thing that's like it's on my mind every week because I'm doing something for it 3, 4, 5 days a week. Like I'm scheduling tweets, I'm making sure our Patreon stuff goes up, I'm trying to make sure the show goes up, and working with Xander on any technical issues, and working with you guys to make sure that we've got topic notes and discussion and all that stuff happening before the show actually happens. Because yes, like Brian said, sometimes
before meaning like just before though.
Well, right. But usually I send out our document on Thursdays before the show goes out. Like this week I didn't send anything out because we didn't have a doc. But most Thursdays, my doc goes out, and I'm hoping that by Sunday there'll be something in there. And sometimes there is, sometimes there isn't. And like I'm not pointing fingers or saying that that's bad because I think our show is pretty fantastic and we do a great job. But it's just a lot. It's a lot of work for me, and to know that other people are also like thinking about it, maybe not as often, but almost as often as I am, is great to hear.
I mean, I have to read comics to talk about them.
I'm really
It's a big investment on my time.
I'm really sorry that you have to read comics.
You know how much Judge Dredd I've had to read those? How many Batman comics I read?
Yeah.
Like I was saying to Mike earlier, I was saying it to Paul earlier, I haven't read a single issue of comics in months. It's all been trades. Like,
oh, really?
I have weeks and weeks and weeks of my pull list sitting in the living room upstairs.
Is this just because of the Star Wars stuff?
That's what started it, but I think I just got into the habit of not reading my comics.
My biggest problem is that I'll want to read something specific, so I'll request it from the library, and then I'll leave the library with 6 to 12 trades, and sometimes they're extremely long. And so when I have time to read comics, that's what I'm reading because there's a due date on them, but I still have a pull list that I have to go pick up. Otherwise, they'll cancel my pull list. So I have arcs worth of issues that I haven't read in some comics.
The constant problem. Yeah. Anybody that I think has a regular pull list has this problem.
So I have a question for you guys. Since we all have pets, what do your pets do while we record?
My cats are usually actually pretty chill. It's during the day, so they have the classic cat problem of just being asleep. So they're usually pretty calm.
That's very fortunate for you, because if our cat is in the basement, he will at some point jump up basically on top of our microphones.
I see.
So since you don't have like a separate room to shut your cats into for an hour and a half every Sunday, it's good that they just sleep.
Yeah, he'll jump onto Kate's desk and she'll boot him off. So he'll turn around and jump onto me. and then I'll boot him off. And I'll turn around and jump onto Kate's desk. Like, we had it the other night. We went back and forth twice, and I finally just looked at him. I was like, "Dude, it's not happening."
I'm blessed with having a very quiet dog. Phyllis does not make a peep, other than occasionally just yawning or snoring when she's sleeping.
I see.
So usually I can't close the door because I have my office, quote unquote, in parentheses, the room where I just keep all my junk. Right? I have that room in the house, and if I have the door closed, Phyllis will kind of scratch on it. So I just leave it open and crack. She'll come in, stare at me for a while while I'm recording. I'll pet her a little bit, and then she'll either lay down or leave the room. But you'll never know she was there. She doesn't make any sound. It's really quite nice.
That's very nice. Yeah, very nice. I feel like there are other pets that we should know about in the future. We'll ask other people. Danny says Phyllis is good. Phyllis good dog 2020. I agree. I guess to wrap things up, we're at about an hour here. This is about how long the show usually goes. Maybe a little less than that because we kept recording while we were on break. But I do want to talk about some stuff that I'm hoping to do for 2020. I mean, I mentioned earlier that we were going to Emerald City Comic Con, which is going to be fucking cool. Like I am excited to go to probably what is the chillest comic convention out there that is in the big leagues of comic conventions. I know that some smaller stuff like FlameCon, for instance, not here in New York, since I'm in Michigan right now. FlameCon in New York is probably the coolest, dopest, chillest comic convention I've ever been to, and it is every single year. It's just so cool, so laid back, so many interesting creators and people to talk to. But Emerald City, I mean, we went the one year for the group, and I've been before, and it is just a cool convention. Like, what a nice convention to go to. So I'm very excited for that. We've got the Saga of Saga series coming up. I think, oh my gosh, this bubbly is just getting to my gullet. We've got, I think Nick and I are trying to put together a mini series for this upcoming year that might start later in the year. We're probably going to reach out to our Patreon folks to determine what the actual book series is that we're going to be reading. So if you're not a Patreon supporter, you should definitely get on that. But a lot of things that we have coming are going to be on the Patreon feed. We're going to drop little tidbits and previews and stuff in the main feed. But I think that's the majority of stuff that I know that's coming. Again, I might push Brian and Kara to try to do something else.
there will almost certainly be more I Read Star Wars comic books like material as more Star Wars comics come out. I know that I'm gonna keep reading a lot of them. Kara probably will too. Yeah. At some point, we'll both have a lot of feelings. I'm not making any promises. Certainly not trying to speak for Kara, but. There's a very real possibility we might record those thoughts.
Right.
I'm excited to turn my attention from zine creation to whatever I want creation and then telling Mike about it when I'm ready to post it, and he can just choose which platform it goes on.
Sure. I mean, I don't know, Paul, we got to get to Flex Mentello at some point.
That's right. We have to do the follow-up to the Mike and Paul read Doom Patrol. I would love to actually talk about the recent Gerard Way run and Nick Darrington Doom Patrol. I think there's missing stuff there, especially having reread the Grant Morrison stuff. I think gives me a lot more there's more to sink your teeth into with that stuff after you've gone back and read the old stuff. I'd love to do another series like that. At some point, I'm going to strong arm somebody into reading Love and Rockets so I can do that with them. So maybe that'll be this year.
I did read the Love Bunglers. Maybe we should do a mini-sode about that. Maybe that'll be this summer. We'll do a Love Bunglers mini-sode. But I think going through all of Love and Rockets, that would be quite something.
Yes. I need an excuse to reread it, and have it with someone would be very fun.
Yeah. So, I mean... That is the best part about this is a lot of times is when we do mini-sodes and we do episodes where people have read the same book, having that discussion is fantastic. I mean, I think the thing that makes our show super unique is that we're not all reading the same stuff, and people really like that. They're like, oh, look at all these different perspectives on things that people have read, things that people are excited about. But like the mini-sodes are really fun to actually go, for once, we read the same thing. Let's talk about it. I really like that. Maybe we'll do more of that stuff this year. I want to do more Discord hangouts. I want to do more stuff like maybe we do a read along series on the Discord, or like a book club discussion where you say, once a month or every other month. I mean, I know we got the Goodreads book of the month stuff, but maybe there's like a once a quarter for just whoever's interested. Let's get together on the Discord and hang out and talk about a comic book versus just typing. Who knows? We'll see. If people are interested, I want to know. I want to know what folks want to do for the next year.
I think that's to tie it back to a point you made earlier. I think last year was one of the first times in a long time I've been very positive and optimistic about comics. And I think that is because I was reading a lot of different stuff. I was reading a lot of stuff digitally, which I hadn't done in the past. I tried to just read comics anytime I felt like I was bored at home. I'm like, I have comics to read. They're just sitting around. They're there digitally. Like, there's something, I can always be reading comics. If I'm not at work, I can be reading comics, right? That's,
yes.
And I'm really trying to push myself to read more. And I think that lends itself to doing more stuff for the show. And I'm glad that we have this forum to do it and that people want to hear it. Mm-hmm. So, yeah.
I don't know. Any final thoughts from Brian and Kate?
No, Danny, we can't read Batman comics to you. Sorry, man. I'll do anything for love, but I won't do that.
I'm just thankful that everybody could gather in my basement and be harassed by my cat, and we can all be here drinking together.
Yes. I'll have to drink one more of these tall boys, I guess, for the night, just because Paul brought so many of them, which is very nice of him. So I guess, I do my regular sign off here. No other final thoughts for things. It's going to be an interesting year, 2020. Big bad crazy year. Mike is going crazy over here, guys. I keep saying to everybody, fuck it, let's just do it. Like, no holds bar. I'm letting the reins go for a lot of different things. I just want to try new shit and have fun with this podcast, like in a way that we haven't before. I think that the very hard-nosed structure that we have is great. But if we can branch beyond that, we can do experimental stuff on Patreon. I'm all for that. So I want to throw a bunch of stuff against the wall this year, see what sticks, go from there. This podcast is just spaghetti noodles that I don't know how to cook. That's the metaphor that I'm going with.
There's your title for the episode.
Yeah.
So I guess for I Read Comic Books, you can follow us all on Twitter. You can follow Paul at Oh Hi Pauly, Brian at Brian Head. You can follow Kate at Kate Elfear. You can follow the show at IRCB Podcast, and you can follow us on Instagram as well. We're all over there. You can check out our Goodreads group at ircbpodcast.com/Goodreads. It's a wonderful group of fantastic comic book people, as I mentioned before. Right now, our book of the month is Saga, so go make sure you're commenting on that. Next month, book of the month is being voted on. If you're not someone that votes, go vote. That's bullshit. Otherwise, you can find everything that we do on Patreon at patreon.com/IRCB podcast, where you can get all of our episodes in advance, as well as access to the Doom Patrol series, the Saga of Saga that's coming out, all sorts of other extra stuff that's not in our main feed. You can get there, as well as early access to Top of My Pile posts, and sometimes we put some really, really long alien articles on there. Our website is ircbpodcast.com. It's got everything that you ever need with I Read Comic Books. You can subscribe, you can find our zine, our pronunciation guide, all that jazz. Infinity Shred is the best band in the universe. They do all the music for our show. I forgot our email address, which is ircbpodcast@gmail.com. Xander is true wizard, top tier, god, DM, best friend, high fives, hugs. If you see him at Emerald City Comic Con, make sure you do one of those things with him that he's okay with. I want to say thank you to Paul and Brian and Kate and me putting this show together. I mean, it's been 5 incredible years. Here's to 5 more. God help us. Podcasts for 10 years.
I'm down.
I don't know. Until next time, thank you guys so much. Thank you to everyone that's listening to the show, giving us feedback, rated us, people that are on Discord listening to the show live, people that just contribute in some capacity, saying thank you for the show, or giving us suggestions of books that we can read, shouting out the show on your social media. It means so much to us that you actually do that. So until next time, comics are good, and so are you. And that's the show.
That's a wrap.
And no one has to hit stop. It's just me.
Yeah.
God, in the future, in the mighty God future that we live in, I will somehow be available to record in person with everybody. But who knows?
Yeah, well, I'll be done telepathically.
Yeah, with our built-in comm links.
We'll all be in our like floaty pods.
Yeah, Wall-E style, right, where we just eat.
I was thinking, no, what's the one with the precogs?
Oh,
Minority Report. Like me, Mike, and Paul get lowered backwards into our goop and then record a podcast.
Yeah, it'll be just the 9 of us, or the 8 of us, and Xander is the Tom Cruise character who has to like put it all together, and one of us is just like coming out of the thing. A beautiful boy, child, man, woman.